This is WFYI News Now. It's January 22nd, and I'm Abriana Herron. On today's show, more than 200 children attended an event Monday to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And companies like Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon are building large data centers in Indiana, and they need a lot of power. We have a feature story on the impact it might have on Indiana's utility companies.
It has already turned the heads of other developers to go, well, if Google's going there, perhaps we can go there as well, right?
Those stories coming up. But first, Indianapolis extended the hours of an overnight warming center at Washington Park Family Center as a dangerously cold winter chill clamped down on the city Sunday night. The National Weather Service warns that temperatures could reach 0 degrees Fahrenheit, with winds making it feel even colder. The warming center will remain available to anyone seeking to keep warm through 8 p.m. on Wednesday, January 22nd. During the day, all Indy Park's family centers will offer warming centers during regular business hours. A map is available on the Office of Public Health and Safety's website. If you need help finding a warming center or other services, you can visit the Mayor's Action Center online or call 211. To celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in Indianapolis, Seeds of Caring held a youth service event on Monday. It partnered with the Madam Walker Legacy Center, and more than 200 children attended. Brandy Jimchura is the founder and executive director of Seeds of Caring.
Whether they're 3, 5, 7, 12 years old, that they know they're never too young to make a difference. We want them to know that they can be part of that change.
Kids made dream catchers and posters highlighting the issues most important to them, and they participated in hands-on service projects to help people in need. Linda Parker and her husband brought their granddaughter to the event. Parker said service to others doesn't have to be only once a year.
It's maybe working in a soup kitchen, or help stock a food pantry, or doing children's activities for women in domestic violence situations. And that's 24/7, 365 days a year. It's being of service to others. That's what life is about.
Brooklyn Lowery attended with her 2 children. She said it was a great way to spend the MLK holiday, this year in particular.
We are all keenly aware we're a heavily divided country at this point, and I think this day, in particular being Inauguration Day, is this very tangible reminder of how divided we are. So coming together with this common idea that I have gifts, I have skills, I have time that I can give to my community.
Dr. King was assassinated in 1968, and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day became a national holiday in 1983. It was not embraced by all states until the year 2000. And for our final story today, companies like Google, Meta, Microsoft, and Amazon are building large data centers in Indiana for artificial intelligence. Each one requires power 24/7, and a lot of it. But Indiana utilities weren't anticipating this when they made plans to get more power from sources like wind and solar. Indiana Public Broadcasting's Rebecca Thiel reports data centers could delay utilities' efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
If there's one thing Indiana is known for besides corn, it's business. And former Governor Eric Holcomb says these data centers will secure Indiana's place in the economy of the future. Fort Wayne's mayor, Sharon Tucker, hopes her city can get a slice of that pie. Google's proposed data center will likely employ no more than 200 people, but she says it'll have ripple effects.
It has already turned the heads of other developers to go, well, if Google's going there, perhaps we can go there as well, right?
But while data centers could present an opportunity for Indiana cities, they're a huge challenge for the state's utilities. Ben Inskeep with the consumer advocacy group the Citizens Action Coalition says, we don't know for sure how much energy these data centers will use, but documents from the utility Indiana-Michigan Power show it's a lot.
These data centers, just in Indiana-Michigan Power's service territory in Indiana, could use more energy each year than all 6.8 million Hoosiers use in their homes each year. So we're talking a scale that people probably can't comprehend when they think of a big data center
Inskeep says if utilities want to meet that large demand for power around the clock, it's unlikely that cleaner sources like wind and solar can do that alone. But to avoid the worst effects of climate change, scientists say we need to significantly reduce emissions by 2030.
If any of that energy, single megawatt hour, comes from fossil fuels, that's increasing our emissions.
And so far, fossil fuels are exactly what Indiana utilities have in mind. There's not a lot of time for them to figure out how to power data centers before they come online and meet climate goals.
The growth of data centers around the U.S. is one of the most challenging opportunities that's come up for utilities in recent years.
That's David Porter with the Electric Power Research Institute, or EPRI. It's helping tech companies figure out how to manage energy use at data centers and solve some of these problems. He says there are ways to make data centers less of a strain on utilities and curb emissions.
There's three main things that take place inside a data center for AI. One is building the model. Two is training the model. And then the third is the actual execution of the model where users are querying it for information.
Porter says the first two can often be done at times when the demand for energy is lower, putting less pressure on the grid. They also have backup generators, so they don't always have to use power from the utility. EPRI is researching ways to swap out the generator fuel they use with climate-friendly alternatives like vegetable oil or biodiesel. All of these things give utilities more choices in how they serve data centers, and potentially greener ones. And that tight timeline data centers have, Porter says tech companies don't need all that power all at once.
Even when they finish getting all the steel and the concrete in the ground and say the buildings are finished, the computer load is not there yet.
Porter says it can take up to 4 years for a data center to get fully up and running. Most of these big tech companies have their own climate goals and are hoping to use some renewable energy to power their data centers. Some are also looking into small nuclear plants. But Porter says that technology is at least a decade from becoming commercially available. In the meantime, he says natural gas will likely fill that gap. The question is, can the planet afford this detour on our path to significantly cut greenhouse gas emissions? Ben Inskeep with the Citizens Action Coalition says absolutely not. He says our first priority should be to live and generate energy in a way that helps us achieve a stable climate.
If we can have some data center load growth within that, okay, great. But if not, then no, we should not be doing this aggressive expansion of AI data centers.
A state senator has proposed a bill that would require data centers to disclose their energy use, but if it doesn't get bipartisan support, it will likely fail. For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Rebecca Thiel.
And that's all for today's episode of WFYI News Now. Our podcast is produced by Drew Daudelin and Zach Bundy, with support from the news team at WFYI and public media journalists across the state. Our news director is Sarah Neal-Estes. Kendall Antron produced our music, and I'm your host, Abriana Herron. If you like today's episode, remember to subscribe and share, and follow WFYI on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to check in on our newsroom throughout the day. Thanks for listening. We'll be back tomorrow.